All right, welcome to another episode of the Real Text Tennis Podcast. We got a really special guest today, the highest ranked player to ever feature on our pod. So we're super stoked about this. I mean, just to set the stage, this guy has won at every single level, which we'll have to talk about. Five star in high school, top 10 in TCU in doubles, and now we're catching him at a red hot streak. Seven challenger titles, career high of 60 on the ATP tour. So we're super stoked to welcome Reese Stalder to the podcast. Reese, how's it going, man?
Thanks. Going well. Thanks for having me. I'm excited, pumped for this. So let's do it.
Yeah, man. I think like we were chatting off air about Fairfield, right? And how we both have seen you at Fairfield. Maybe that's like a good place to start. I think the one thing I didn't mention is like prior to Fairfield, you'd basically traveled like the entire world. Like we saw you went to Europe, then back to the States, then back to Asia afterwards. So you're setting the record. You and Evan are setting the record right now for most miles traveled in a very short period of time. But I guess let's just start with like Fairfield overall and what your impressions of that match were, like what your mind state was kind of going, what your guys' mindset was kind of going into that tournament.
Yeah. I mean, we were between going to Fairfield or going to Europe there was a couple of 125s that week. Um, but it made more sense. I mean, more travel, but it made more sense to go to Fairfield. I'm from SoCal, so my mom came to that tournament. I have my aunt and uncle live not too far from there, so that was part of it. And yeah, I like the courts in California, so that played a big part of it. And yeah, it was they do, as we talked about earlier, they do a good job of they put a lot of effort into that event. And Evan and we played well all week, and ended up winning the tournament. But yeah, a lot of good teams, and we were happy with the result.
That's actually super interesting that you mentioned that you like the courts in like California specifically. I'm curious when you were deciding, is that something you actually consider when deciding potentially to go to different tournaments? Do you take the like court surface into consideration?
Yeah, I would say for Evan and I, that's probably the biggest factor. Size of the tournament is actually sorry, size of the tournament is probably the
Yeah.
biggest factor. Um, but the next thing we look at is if all things are equal, what conditions suit us best. And I grew up in SoCal, so outdoor hard courts
Yeah.
are, that's what I'm looking for. Even indoor is I'm okay with, but I didn't play an indoor until I got to college. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big factor. We're willing to fly, as you talked about earlier. We're willing to travel to let some lengths, to find conditions that suit our game. And yeah, I think it paid off for us. So
That's actually super interesting because especially like guys who play, I mean, guys who play full-time doubles as well, right? Like there's you have to play on clay, you have to play on grass and stuff. And it's interesting because I remember hearing someone the other day saying like basically they instead of going to play on a hard court and they went and played on clay because they knew it would set them up for the future. But do you think the way you're thinking of about like choosing tournaments is consistent across like other teams as well, or that specifically how you and Evan view it?
I think it's pretty consistent among a bunch of
Interesting.
teams. A lot of it's everyone wants to play in conditions that suit their game, but there's more factors that go into it. Like depends on what your ranking is, what cuts are going to be in certain places depending on size of the tournament, where tournaments are before and after. Can you make like a nice block of tournaments in one spot? And seeding, whether or not you're going to be seeded, is huge. So um, there's there's a bunch of factors that go into like scheduling and where you want to go. But um, yeah, Evan and I had the luxury if we're playing a challenger, we would have been seeded and we were going to get in. So it kind of allowed us to kind of wait and see what places would, on paper suit our game. That doesn't mean we win every time, but I feel like it gives us our best chance to play well.
You don't have to be humble, man. I'm looking at the stats here. 51 wins on the year, 8 of which at tour level. Obviously, Peace had 7 challenger titles. I wanted to double click on that Fairfield final. Me and P actually got to watch the match live, and you played a fellow RTT alum in Vasil. Without maybe exposing too much of the strategy or game, did you guys have any kind of high level tactics going in, or do you usually go into a match uh, fresh, or like how much scouting do you do? Maybe take us into the window of your guys' mind.
Yeah. So there's definitely a balance. I feel like because all challenger matches are streamed and you can go back in archives and look at a bunch of stuff. So you can have easy access to a bunch of video. And we definitely take advantage of that. When I like kind of first made the jump to challengers, I didn't really utilize it at first and not talking to a bunch of guys. And I was like, okay, dang, this is a tool that everyone else is using and I need to use. But then interestingly enough, in my opinion, like with Evan, sometimes at the start, we noticed that we sometimes would rely like too heavily on a video and just be like, oh, and go everything to one corner, even if it wasn't what necessarily suited our game. So you definitely like I watch video of everyone that I play, no matter what, but we try not to overdo it and lose our identity like during the match. So like maybe we'll be like, okay, big points, this guy prefers this serve, or this side, this return, his forehand return is worse. So shade a little more to this side, a little more to this side, but you definitely don't want to like get too caught up in a scout because then you can kind of lose sight of what your own strengths are, in my opinion. So it's kind
Yeah,
of a balance.
really well said. I think one thing we noticed was you guys seem to do a really good job of attacking the forehands with your serves. We've noticed that the forehand return is actually a lot of times weaker than the backhand return, especially in doubles when you have that extra hand to just block it back and direct it. We've seen teams be a lot more successful, and it seemed like Dennis and Vasil were a little bit more stubborn, kind of going to your backhands, and you burned them a few times, even in that last game to break. Uh, is that something you guys are doing consciously? And also, how often are you guys intentionally mixing it up with with the knowledge that you might actually lose that point, but it's good for the variety in the long term just to change up the strategy?
Um, so as far as the forehand, the first part of the question, I agree. With the caveat that yes, like guys will miss more. Most guys will miss more forehand returns, but it's also you have to be a little careful because it's also more dangerous. Like backhand returns are more solid and steady, uh, like pretty consistently. I agree. I think, but um, I feel like guys can take big cuts and points can be over quicker with a forehand. So I think you kind of have to balance it. But yes, for sure, like you can't guys are too good to just go to the same spot every time. So you definitely have to be comfortable hitting all spots, um, especially big moments because I know guys watch tape on me, they know what I like to do. So you have to still be comfortable hitting your less preferred spots in big moments. But yeah, as far as like the Dennis, like you mentioned, the Dennis and Vasil, like um, I mean, Dennis has one of the best backhands in the world as well. I mean, his backhand is a joke. So he still has a great forehand too. But Vasil, same with him. Like he has a great backhand, good return. That's a tough team because they're just a good, really good returning team. Both of those guys, and so we felt like we got to go to our favorite spots and just kind of we accept the fact that you're going to play long points and you know be ready to battle a bit.
And that's crazy because I think if we remember correctly, like you guys got broken in the very first game and nothing changed, no mentality, like just went ahead with your business. And I think you broke right at 3-1 right back, right? And so um it's interesting because one of the things we feel like we've like game in terms of game plans in tennis in both doubles and singles, like strategy is important, but it almost comes down to a sense of at the end of the day, you have to like play to your strengths and like kind of limit theirs and attack their weaknesses. Do you feel like that kind of the simplicity of that is how you guys approach your like doubles and like tennis game overall, or do you feel like there's highly nuanced things that you guys are doing when coming up with the game plan?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, you definitely you know, you need to expose weaknesses. You're
Yeah.
not just going to beat guys going at their strengths, but it's a balance. If their strength is, if what you like to do plays into their strength, it doesn't mean you can't you're not going to do what you like to do. So you definitely have to be willing to, make a little bit of a balancing act, try to keep them off balance and go from there.
That's super interesting. And I honestly, I think the like next point of this is obviously you guys have played a lot of really good teams this year, but you've also played like guys like Rohan Bopana and Matt Ebden, right, who reached the finals of the Open and stuff. And I'm curious when you're playing like, like the teams that you see in like the challenger level versus like the next level, like what are you noticing in the differences between like doubles teams that honestly not even those two levels, just like futurists to challengers to like guys who are consistently playing on the Grand Slam or ATP or
Um,
Quadra Tour.
yeah, I would say, man, it's tough. Everyone is really good. I mean,
Yeah.
like the best futures teams, are really good, and obviously challenger guys are really good, and the ATP guys are really good. It's just the margins are really small. Um, like I think what the top guys do, like Bopana, Ebden, they make they make the court feel small, and a lot of challenger guys team do that too. But you really, I felt like part of it is I was at Wimbledon, I was on grass, like it's already kind of tough to return and stuff. Um, but they make the court feel really small, and I thought they play big points really well. We had 3 match points against them actually, and like 3 first serves. Like they didn't. I felt like they didn't panic. They didn't give an inch. In some situations, other guys may have. And 3 match points, Ebden comes up and three good serves, and it's does. You know what I mean? It's just like that's kind of what they do well. But no, margins are crazy small. Um, yeah, it's tough.
It's funny you mentioned that because I happened to be I was in New York when Vasil and Dennis were on their run in the at the U.S. Open, and match point for Dennis Steele, Austin Krajicek pumps 140 down the tee to Dennis, and Dennis is like cheating over on the outside trying to cover like the backhand like the slider out wide, and
Yeah.
saved match point, and like that's it that Austin and Yvonne like win the match, right? And so it is crazy how like ridiculously small the margins are. I'm curious, like at Wimbledon, prior to you playing at Wimbledon this year, was that your first, like did you played on grass prior to that, or was that the first time?
I actually played a college tournament on grass my
No way.
sophomore year or something at Newport, Rhode Island. But that was it. I didn't play any grass leading up to it, but it was not as big of an adjustment as I thought, because I mean it's definitely different, but that grass is super thin, and I
Yeah.
actually thought it played more like a hard um like the courts at the US Open are quicker than courts at Wimbledon, no doubt. So I actually thought it wasn't that bad to adjust to. Um, Definitely like some bounces and like rhythm stuff, but um, yeah, it wasn't. Even though I hadn't played a ton, not a ton, I had not played at all. It didn't feel as shocking to the system as I had thought. So
Interesting. And you mentioned Newport. I wanted to kind of switch gears and maybe we usually like to go chronologically. We wanted to cover Fairfield first just because it was top of mind. Uh,
yeah,
you want to talk to us a little bit about the origin story? Obviously, You mentioned you're from Newport. Kind of when did you start playing tennis? How'd you get into it? And then we'll definitely kind of lead back up into the current results. I'm just curious
Yeah.
about that origin story.
Oh, like the Newport, the college tournament?
Even before that, just kind of how you got
Oh,
into tennis, and junior results. One thing we noticed that was really interesting is we've been talking this about this a lot is with a lot of other players, we've noticed kind of a meteoric rise in the rankings, but your progression has just been so steady and linear all the way going back to the juniors, like freshman year of high school, just 4-star, 5-star, blue chip, number six singles, three singles, one doubles, futures, challengers, Wimbledon. Talk to us about how you have accomplished that because usually it's just like a step function, and it seems like you've been changing levels very, very steadily.
yeah. So well, I started playing tennis. Both my parents played. They played in college. They both played pro as well. So I was around it a bunch. I played a bunch of sports growing up. Played, I probably was in seventh or eighth grade when I quit soccer and basketball and I started focusing on tennis. But no, I never was homeschooled. Went to public high school, went to like, so, when I started high school and I was just focusing on tennis, I was just going to practice hour and a half after school. I felt like I was a normal like high school student who just played tennis more than like my identity was like wrapped around tennis. Um but no, I was yeah, so I wasn't one of those academy kids. I didn't like to I probably would have quit if I was playing 4 hours a day. That wasn't my deal. So yeah, I felt like I had a pretty normal childhood, and then results started getting good, went to TCU, and felt like I improved a lot in college, and then yeah, so that was pretty much it.
How'd you make that decision to, well, actually, before we get into college, could you talk through how you made that jump from 97 freshman year in high school in the national ranks all the way up to top 20 and kind of the blue chip territory? What were the key changes that happened? Did you have a growth spurt? We've seen kind of common themes now a few times, bigger serve, bigger weapons, anything tactically changed, fitness changes.
Um, I was always like I liked to come in. I liked I was aggressive. And I feel like I was, you know, I started to learn to be a little more patient. I would say that still, I don't play singles anymore, but like I would say it was never a huge strength of mine. If any, like I would always err on the side of being impatient. That was probably like the biggest thing. If I could go back, I wish I could just be a little more selectively aggressive instead of just like always going. But I think I started to just make more balls a little bit. And I also started to get bigger. So, my shots did a little more damage over time. And I don't think I didn't have a huge growth spurt. I'm 6 foot. 6 foot is being probably a little generous, to be honest. So I'm not that big. I was never like super short, but I don't think it was anything in particular. I feel like I just kept working on my game and I kept getting better. And obviously, the better you do, the more belief you have in yourself. And I think it's a little it's tough. It's tough when you're like an aggressive minded player and you're younger, just because you can only hit the ball so hard. So it's just part of the learning curve is to channel the aggressiveness, learn to channel it, but also just grow into your body. So it's a little bit of a blend, I think.
Totally. And hindsight's probably 2020, and you may be kicking yourself now for, points or matches where maybe you're too aggressive. But I honestly look at it the flip side where the grass isn't always greener, and me and P are both back fence grinders. So we can tell you that without having developed those weapons and without having that aggressive mindset, it feels like it's almost easier to, correct me if I'm wrong, to temper down an aggressive mindset, but have that potential for big shots than develop an aggressive game when your mindset is very defensive from the onset. It, from my experience, the only player who's really done that at the highest level was Andy Murray when he just like completely revolutionized his game style to win Wimbledon, and even now we're seeing him kind of revert back to his old instincts.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I do think it's definitely easier to learn to tone it back a little bit, tone the aggressiveness back than to ramp up the aggressiveness if that's your. So I definitely agree. And hindsight is 2020. Of course, I wish I could go back in time with like the perfect strategic mindset at 12 years old, but that's not realistic. But I think that's a good point about when it's easier to shift from more aggressive to a little more patient. But yeah, I was definitely not afraid of the bailout drop shot. So
which is now an underrated. I mean, the
Yeah.
shot's coming back, right? Like Carlos is using it a lot. Like you see
yeah, now
guys
I'm seeing, I'm like,
more and more.
dang,
Yeah.
dude, I was ahead of my time.
And I mean, on the point of the aggressiveness, right? Like no one is like even from what we saw at the start of the year, like no one Ben Shelton was hitting really like playing a really really aggressive brand of tennis, like a lot of on first airs, and you can almost see him continue to like get more consistent as the match went on, like even against like Novak, like in at the Open, right? And so
Yeah.
I think dialing it back is significantly easier, but I do, but then like not having the mindset as he rightly pointed out, us just standing at the back fence like Medvedev returning serve. But the one point that you actually talked about that's super interesting is that you mentioned both your parents played college and pro, and that's super interesting because I mean we've had multiple therapy sessions about what our parents were telling us when we were playing juniors, and I'm really curious to hear what they might have been telling you as you were like continuing to get better and what kind of guidance they might have had, A, but also B, how they might have helped you structure your like practices even on those hour and a half.
Yeah, they were always support. I mean, my parents are on the older side for my age as well. So like they grew up with like wooden rackets and stuff. Like they played with wood. So games definitely evolved, but I think they've all like that also makes them like really appreciative of like an all court game. So they were really supportive of like they were okay with me making errors. And I think that's like a quality that a lot of like parents of kids maybe who don't have the tennis background, like they see errors and they just like don't miss.
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge benefit. But yeah, they didn't they're definitely I would practice with them a lot when I was young. And yeah, they were great. They were really good tennis parents. Obviously they they saw the game at a high level too, so it's good to be able to like trust that your parent knows the right thing. And they did push me like they weren't like have the kitty gloves on the whole time, so it wasn't like always easy, but they were really great as far as development. And I was never, as I said before, like I never wanted to play like hours upon hours a day. I would have burnt out. I wasn't like in love with just hitting balls. So they definitely did a great job with like not just overdoing it, because I probably wouldn't be playing still. I probably would have quit at some point if I was like, just playing nonstop. So they did a great job with motivating me and pushing me, but also like making sure that I was still enjoying it and not taking it too seriously. They didn't have like a vision for me to like be a pro, when I was a little kid. They just wanted me to they say that their goal for me was to play varsity high school, and I was like, "Okay, come on. That's ridiculous." Like that's definitely not true.
That was an
Stack you at the
understatement.
three double spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think that was their vision, but they said they certainly weren't just grooming me to be like a pro or anything. But I think I've gotten farther than what they had saw me getting to, which is great because I wouldn't want that like expectation of being certain ranked or whatever, So I'm really fortunate with how they, treated me along with tennis. So
Yeah, it sounds like you had a really balanced approach. And there are academy guys who burn out. There are guys like Rafa who hit 5 hours a day. I guess what drew you at in the juniors to tennis versus some of the other sports that you mentioned? Was it the competitive aspect? What's kind of are you intrinsically motivated, extrinsically motivated? Um, what are your thoughts on that?
um well, because I really loved basketball. I played soccer up till late as well, but I knew that that was the clock was ticking on my soccer career pretty early. I didn't love it, but I love basketball. But I remember I played in a decent, like a pretty good league, and then they didn't. I had this kid who just like never passed, and I was like, "Jesus, man! Like at least tennis."
My bad. As a fellow bull hog,
Yeah.
I'm probably
Hey, no
responsible for
hate,
that
no
one.
hate. But for me, I was like, all right, well, like tennis, I also, there was no future. I'm not, when I was in middle school or whatever, I didn't think that I would go pro in either one, but there's really not much of a future in basketball for me, like I'm not going to the NBA, that's for sure. It's probably not college either. So, tennis, I was better at tennis as well, so I think it was kind of natural to just shed the others. And I probably felt, even though my parents, I felt like didn't put pressure on which sport to choose, they did say I had to choose something. um and I felt, they didn't say it, but I probably felt pressure anyways to pick tennis because of their background, but it was also the logical choice as well, so it was an easy choice, I would say.
And honestly, growing up in SoCal, right, like you have the access to both basketball and tennis, but like SoCal is a hotbed for tennis, right? And I'm curious about the competition around it, like during that time, especially. Like, who are some of the good players that grew up in your area during that time? And do you feel like that you're the competition you played at that age, like help prepare you for college?
Yeah, 100%. We had some good dudes. We had grew up with, like, the SoCal tournaments were Taylor Fritz, Brandon Holt, this guy Calvin Boyd, Ernesto Escobedo. He was a little older than me, I think. Older guys like Deaton Bauman. And I was not as good as like the Ernestos, stuff like that. But like Holt and Fritz, they're a year younger than me, but see them all the time at junior tournaments, like with Riley Smith, all the Smith kids. Um, so yeah, there were a lot of good guys. Billy Rowe, but it was nice. I mean, I never played ITFs. I never did any of that because I was gonna miss school. So it was nice to just be a weekend tennis tournament guy, And I would just get in a car and drive there. My parents would just take me. When I turned 16, I would just drive myself. They wouldn't even go. So, well, sometimes they would. A lot of times they would. But
That's
yeah,
pretty
it
brave
was,
though.
yeah, yeah, but it was definitely fortunate to be in SoCal for that, because I know a lot of guys don't have the luxury of uh like having such strong tournaments and such strong competition just a quick drive away. So
Yeah, I vividly recall I went to Bellarmine and we would always come down for the Newport High School National Invitational Tournament. And the competition just bewildered us because I think for every player who was kind of at my level, there were probably 10 or 20 at that level in SoCal, whereas there might be a couple in NorCal and spread across, several square miles. So definitely the density of players was tremendous to see coming up. I remember even Gage Breimer was probably
yeah,
the best
Gage,
from our
can't believe I
class.
forgot
Yeah.
him. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
there were so many, man. It was Stefan Manicella, Alec Adamson,
right.
of course. It's just there were so many guys. So it was really really good for me. Didn't have to even think about going to some flying off to some tennis academy or something. So
Yeah, and that I mean that's something like we see. I feel like we see a little bit more of nowadays too. Like I mean, Ben Shelton didn't fly across outside the country. He just trained in Florida, right? And I feel like we see a little bit more of that nowadays, where you can get better in the current place you're at. You don't have to go to a fancy academy and or anything like that, right? Like there's still ways to make it work. And I'm curious now, like talk to us a little bit about your process from to once you went from high school to college. Like how did you decide on TCU? What were your at this point, I'm guessing just by the way you're talking, like going pro still wasn't in the consideration. Like, how'd you make your decision to go to TCU, and what were kind of the factors you were considering?
I mean, I wanted a good tennis team, and good academics. I like sports, so I wanted a good athletic program, but I didn't want like the huge 50,000 undergrad kind of vibe. So TCU just checked all the boxes. Um, and yeah, Roditi, I was lucky. Roditi recruited me, and then a couple weeks after I committed, they hired Devin Bowen as the assistant, who I knew pretty well, because he's from where I'm from. So it was like it was perfect, and yeah, it was great. I love TCU. Definitely a shock to the system a little bit. I was playing more than ever. Other guys probably was like, "Dang, I'm playing less in college now," but I was definitely like never played so much in my life. Um, but I'd say by the end of high school, I was like, maybe I could. I was like, oh, maybe it's a possibility I could go pro. But I definitely wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna play at TCU then turn pro. But yeah, I definitely got a lot better at TCU, and I started to develop better habits, practice habits. I still think I had decent habits in high school and stuff, but I definitely made leaps in college. So that was big.
And like I mean, we all know now, like Cameron Nori went to TCU as well, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he was a year above you, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, like especially now that you're playing doubles like full time, like what were some of the things you like coaches had you work on doubles wise or even singles wise that helped you like get prep for the next level, and even other guys like on the team, right? Like you say everyone was like playing a lot and guys were getting a lot better. I'm curious like what that process looked like.
Yeah. So I got to college. I was like in and out of the lineup in singles my freshman year. I was playing doubles. But yeah, it was tough. We had a lot of really good guys. Um, I remember we got in there, and I was always better at doubles than I was at singles, even in juniors and stuff too. And I got to college, and Coach Roditi wanted me to change my volley grip. I was like, this is the one thing I do better than a lot of these guys, than a lot of my teammates, and you want to change my volley grip? Like, this is crazy. Definitely didn't fully buy in at first, but I did it. And looking back, definitely the right move. 100% the right move. So shout out to Coach Roditi on that. But yeah, we were working. They wanted me singles wise. They were working on like shot selection and being patient, stuff like that. And um, a lot of the doubles. I felt like I was good in doubles and juniors, but I was pretty raw. I didn't necessarily like think of specific concepts um like explicitly when I was a junior, and then in college they were like, okay, this is the right thing to do, and this is why we do it. So I definitely learned like more of the ins and outs in college, for as far as doubles is concerned. And yeah, I mean, both Roditi and Devin were great doubles players. They're both top 40, I think. So they definitely know what they're talking about, and they they helped me out a ton. So that
Yeah,
was
I mean, Well, you're closing in on 40 now. I'm curious. I mean, we got asked, right? So what did you change your volley grip from and to? That's super interesting, especially at that late in your career.
Um,
Especially because we're also all taught as like juniors, right? Like you have to use a
Continental.
continental
Yep.
grip, like you have to
yeah.
have the hands up, right? Like,
I'll actually have a racket. I'll show you. I'll show you. I got a racket over here.
oh yeah.
We apologize for those that don't get to see this video. Perhaps it'll come out at some point.
Oh yeah, shoot. I forgot. It says yeah. So basically I used to be like here,
Oh,
which is like
Interesting.
pretty
Pretty semi.
like
semi.
if
I was gonna
yeah,
say, yeah.
like if this is like fully like continental or whatever, like I was on this side, so I was more open, I
Yep.
guess. Um, and so we changed it. So now I'm probably I'm more closed than continental. I'm just a little bit
Wow,
more
interesting.
on the closed side. Because I was super weak as far as like the backhand volley with like the open grip, for example. Like I was getting absolutely no stick. Um, and it was just not repeatable. And I was like, oh, it's fine. I mean, it's working for me. But Roditi was kind of the impetus as far as like changing that. And yeah, it's definitely the right move. I don't know what other guys' volley grips are, if everyone's like that too, but the open grip for me, it wasn't working. So that was definitely a big adjustment, but definitely paid off. Practiced it a lot, but definitely worth it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think whenever I think of the continental grip, I think of the forehand volley being pretty solid, but maybe it's plausible. I mean, we've seen Federer kind of almost sometimes hit topspin volleys with a semi-Western grip on the forehand side. But the backhand volley now, you really made me think about it. With the semi-Western backhand volley grip, you were probably hitting a little bit late, having trouble making contact out in front, but the continental grip probably got everything really solid, huh?
Yeah, it's just easier to keep like the racket on one plane, which is what you want on a volley. Um, so yeah, I would say it was just a lot more solid. There's a lot more it's easier to keep your wrist from breaking as well, because the more wrist break you get, just the more the volley will float and die kind of. So yeah, it definitely shored it up a little bit.
And the other thing we're not talking about, right, is like when I mean you and your partner at the net and your guys are have to do reflex volleys, the time it takes to you for you to go from like forehand to hitting a potential backhand is like significantly longer than if you're just doing continental grip. I think one of the things I'm kind of curious about is in during college, did you do any specific doubles drills in order to develop like better hands or better reflexes, or what was the college process of working on doubles in order to get you prepped for the next level?
Yeah, we worked a lot on dubs. Doubles point is huge in college, so but it's still only 1 point. So I was even surprised sometimes how much we played doubles. I liked it, but yeah, we did like every day at practice, we would have a guy on like just an inch from the net and guys just teeing off at the guy who's like an inch from the net. And that was not a fun. I mean, I still do like it's still a great drill. I still do it, but not especially when you're like in college, it's like a new thing. You're like, geez, and these guys are already hitting so hard. But yeah, we would do a lot of that. We do a lot of like kind of poaching, like volleys while you're moving, first volley drills. But as far as like hands, yeah, that was the biggest one where guys just ripping at you and you're right on top of the net. And yeah, definitely not a fun drill, but it's makes it so when you play a match, it kind of slows it down a little bit and you're not on your back foot. You're still able to like stay calm and be ready for balls that are going to get crushed. So definitely worth it.
And Reese, one more thing about college that I found really interesting as I'm looking at your resume here. Uh, I'm going to give you three stats. I'm really curious which one you think is the most impressive. One is obviously, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but junior year, it looks like you climbed as high as top 30 in the rankings for doubles. Unbelievable. I think senior year, you probably got even higher than that. Uh, this one really stuck out to me. Six golden sets in your sophomore season. And then number three is, I believe it looks like also in your sophomore season, you guys took out the number one ranked team in the country. Which of those three is the most impressive? Because the number two one stuck out to me as just a preposterous stat. That's the most
Yeah.
cold-blooded thing I've ever heard.
Our I think whoever doing the stats counts 6-0 as a golden set, even though we lost many points. So I think it's a little deceptive. I'll take the golden set call, but no, it wasn't actual golden sets. But that's interesting, yeah, because so I actually played one doubles my freshman year and sophomore year, and then junior and senior year they I played like two or three and then a little bit of one again my senior year
That's a
because
pretty big stack.
just of how we like did the lineups and stuff. But that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know those stats. But it was pretty funny. We bageled some good guys that just like wins that aged well, and we just didn't even realize it. I mean, great player. He's if he ever listens to this, sorry for calling you out. Nate Lamon's one of the bagels that I got. And
Brutal.
so he's gotten me since then. He's had a ridiculous career, but I still taunt him about that one a little bit.
As you should. I mean, from one thing that we've noticed too, especially in the pros, is that the doubles matches usually come down to the wire. There's so many three setters and 10-point breakers. So logging the bagels is especially impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I don't know. They happen too much. I mean, I've also been bageled, so it goes both ways. But yeah, college it starts and ends so quick with no ad set
Yeah.
doubles. It's just like I mean, you could be out of in and out in 13 minutes, So it's just like who starts strong, who's winning deuce points early, making returns. Because if you start slow, there's just a lot of time. There's just not enough time to come back in the college format. And yeah, in pros, same thing. I mean, it's just the margins are so small. A team could be 0 for 6 break points, be sniffing breaks all day, and the other guys got one chance and took it, and that's a set. So it's just takes some getting used to. It's not easy, but it's definitely part of the game. And we've played a lot. Evan and I have played a lot of breakers, and I feel like it. You learn to just accept it, and it is what it is, and it's nothing to be like, oh my god, this is just crazy. I can't believe like it's a breaker. Holy crap, every point's so important. It's just part of the way it is. It's the same for everyone, so it's not it's not anything to be like too gung ho about.
It's like the thing. Like, I mean, if Federer can get bageled, if Djokovic can get bageled, it can happen to the rest of us. So I completely agree there. I'm curious, like post college, like where was your mindset in terms of potentially deciding? I'm assuming by this point, you knew you had a chance to go pro. It looks like you started off in 2019, like playing majority on the Futures Tour and two titles and one final as well. So it's a pretty good
Mhm.
start to your pro career as well.
Yeah, it was. I was lucky in that I got I had a couple points like going in to pro like being pro, so I didn't have to grind to just get into like futures qualies, for example. But yeah, it was good. I felt like I started off pretty well. It was tough because COVID hit in 2020. So I had finished the year 2019 playing, COVID hits, and it's out for a year basically. And then I played basically half the year in 2021. And then 2022 was like my first year from January to December. and then this was my second year. So I just turned 27, but I still feel like kind of young as far as I feel like younger than 27 at least. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how it turned out, but yeah, I feel like every level there's just a lot of good players, and you're gonna win some and lose some, but I feel like it went well. It went well for me.
I feel like, do you feel like the transition from pro, do you feel like the best teams that you were playing against in college were comparable to like the Futures Tour? Is that why you feel like it was really easy to make a transition? And then like the second thing you talked about is like in 2021, I'm like seeing here, like you at one point there were seven straight like losses at the Challengers Tour, but like you guys turned it around by winning the Challenger in Puerto Vallarta. So like I'm curious, like your process through that and how you guys were able to like continue to push forward during
Yeah.
that year.
Um, yeah, well, to start, like as far as very comparable level as far with like good college guys and futures guys. For me, it also, I know he's not a doubles guy, but like I'm really good friends with like Cam Nori because he was my teammate and stuff. And so like to see him, and I'm with him every day, and I saw him at practice every day. So like that was really good for like some self-belief purposes. And it still is to be like, oh, this is what he's doing. Like I know what he's, I know his game well. I know him well, and look how well he's doing. Like, I'm not at his level, obviously, but like, who's to say I can't have success too? So that definitely helped, and um, yeah, that's those losses in a row, man. It's tough because you're playing so much. Like the tour plays so many mind games, so it's like, man, 7 tournaments in a row, I lose first round. And I remember I was in a dark spot mentally. Like, man, I haven't won a match in 2.5, 3 months. And it's like I'm playing every week, but you're actually not even match tough because you're just playing one match per week because you're losing first round. And so it's really easy for it to snowball. And it's a really tough spot. And I feel like everybody goes through things like that. But all it takes is one good result and you forget about everything. Like I remember the week before Puerto Vallarta, we won one match. I was like, thank God. Oh my God, And then Puerto Vallarta, we won it, my first challenger. And I felt like, that the losing streak felt like years ago. And it was 2 weeks ago I hadn't won a match in months. So it's really a tough spot to be in, but it can be tough when you're in the, winning tournaments feels so far away, but all it takes is one good week and it can really feel like you're reversing your luck.
It's a thing, like confidence is super fragile, right? Like it takes a lot to like build it up, and it's very few players have the ability to let like that one loss like kind of get to, or multiple losses get to them, right? It takes so much like mental effort. I'm curious, like you won the Challenger in Puerto Vallarta 2022. Now you're playing like exclusively on the Challenger Tour, and you won two Challengers like in a row in May. At that point, what was the mindset? Was the belief like, okay, I can like kind of make progress towards playing like 250s, 500s, and like playing at the next level? Or what were your goals like now that you're playing on the Challenger Tour, like more like full time?
Um, like at the like after Vallarta and stuff, like at start
Yeah,
of 2022, okay. Yeah,
yeah.
I would say that was big for, just to show that you can do it. Like the first challenger I played, I made the final, which was huge. And I was like, oh, okay, like I could do it. And then next thing you know, I haven't won a match in months. And then you start to like second guess yourself. And then you win one and you're like, okay, thank God I can do it. Um, but no, as far as it takes it to get to a spot to be in like tour events consistently, you have to win so much. So I know it's not, I knew at the time it's not going to take like one or two or even three titles. Like you need a lot of deep runs. It's just not enough to make a semi every week. It's better to lose first round and then win a tournament Um, but I don't think I was thinking personally like, oh, like now I'm close. I need to get to here. It was more just like kind of take the tournaments as they come and reassess after every, like, what am I, had a good week? What am I ranked now? Could I get into a tour event? No. Okay, let's go back, play some challengers. If they went well, then it's like, oh, maybe I can sneak in here. And then you do. And then how does that go? So it's definitely like, it's kind of take it week by week. But no, I'm not really thinking like, okay, I'm at this level now and I need to play this. It's more, where am I at this week? It's so fluid, like you see guys at challengers who have been top 50, and you see guys on tour who were stuck at challengers for forever. So it's a lot more, I think it's just a lot more fluid than what a lot of guys think. And so I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be like, okay, I'm in challengers now. And then, okay, I'm in tour events now. I'm in challengers, I'm ranked when I'm ranked, and um, have more success. I want to get higher. I want to get higher and play whatever, all the, get into main draws like a 500 or like masters event. Like that's a goal that I'm not capable of playing right now at my ranking. So it's a lot, is like, it's just not that much difference between guys at the top and guys who are below me.
Another interesting thing that happened in 2022, it looks like, is you joined the coaching staff for UNC. Talk to us about that decision, that experience, how it's kind of played into your development as both a player and a coach.
Yeah, well, it started because I met my girlfriend who's from Raleigh. So, or sorry, not from Raleigh, from Hickory, but lives in Raleigh. And so I was just visiting, and practicing with some of the guys. And then they asked me if I wanted to be volunteer, and I said yes. And they said I could play my full schedule. Um, and so it was a perfect gig because I could practice with the guys. Um, Before that, I didn't really know Coach Paul and Trip. Like I knew like a hello, everything, but no, it was, I loved the coaching aspect of it. I thought it was really fun. Great to be back in like the college tennis environment, but yeah, I was volunteer assistant for 2 years, and I'm in Raleigh right now. I still practice there. I'm still based out of there. It's a really good situation. Trip and Coach Paul have done so much for me as far as like taking time, I'm like out of their days to let me use the facilities. They help coach me a lot. Trip even helped me at Wimbledon. He was there with his family and he was coaching me there. So it's just like I can't thank him enough for how much they've done for me. And yeah, it's my base right now. So it's been a really, really good situation.
That's a dope story. And how has coaching kind of changed or influenced your perspective on the game, if at all?
I would say it wouldn't. I don't think it changed my perspective of the game, but it's definitely good. It reminds me because I look at like the college guys playing, and I see things that I tell them thing. I see something and I tell them something. I'm like, oh dang, okay. I actually might make. I think I make the same mistake sometimes. But it's not necessarily like a change of perspective, but maybe like I have become a little more aware of like, oh, that's something I haven't thought about in a while, and I need to make sure that I'm doing this a certain way. So maybe it translates a little bit like that, but I don't think it gave me a new perspective being a coach as far as being a player. Just a little really good reminders of good habits and things.
Especially when you see like certain things day by day, you like pick up on certain things, right? Like when you see pros play, you notice like little adjustments that you can make that might help your game, right? And I'm curious, like now that you're based in Raleigh, like how do you go about deciding or like figuring out your practice schedule? Like what are the types of things you're working on now in order to like help you get better for like the subsequent year? Like how do you train now, especially given that you're playing with different partners sometimes throughout the year? Like how does that process work?
Yeah, I mean my practice I've definitely upped it since high school, but I still am not like a 5 hour a day guy. I wake up, I go to practice for I've been doing like 2.5 hours and then I go I work out, do fitness or lift, um, and that's pretty much it. But as far as like the guys and stuff, it depends on who's in town. Trip helps me a ton on court. Like I'll go do some individual stuff with Trip. I'll take some take some guys and they'll help. We'll do
Beat him up
whatever.
a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it's mutual. It's very mutual, the beating up. I get them sometimes, they get me sometimes, but it's really good. And I'm not the coach anymore. They have Rob
Yeah.
Kelly. I don't know if you guys remember Robert Kelly. He is the third assistant now. But I mean, my situation, I'm still based out of there. It's a great situation for me. So yeah, I mean, the practice situation is great. There's so many guys. Rinky's back. I'm friends with Rinky. He comes back a lot. There's like some pros here, and it's a lot easier. I love California. I really want to move back at some point, but it's just far from everything. And I go to Europe a lot. Um, so it's a lot easier. My girlfriend's here, obviously. But it's just California is just super out of the way from places, so it can be a difficult spot to base out of, especially doubles. You play so many weeks. It's nice to have a place that you can go back to, and when you don't have as many breaks as like singles guys, since they play less events than doubles guys.
No, for sure. And it sounds like your setup is great and that you have the competition, you have the facilities you need to train, and you have the coaching and mentorship you need. So really no need to go in everywhere else. Like I'm curious now, like now that you and Evan are on a roll, uh, what are your guys' goals for next year, and how does the rest of next year look like for you guys?
Well, definitely want to play all the slams.
Yeah.
We should be fine for Australia, I think. But like we would have been at our ranking, we'd be in every slam this year. So I
Yeah.
don't see why we wouldn't be in Australia. But should be okay for Australia. Fingers crossed. And as far as I'm not really thinking any specific ranking as far as goals, but I want to end the year higher than I started it for sure. But Evan and I we feel like we've been playing great, and I don't see why we can't have success on the main tour as well. We've done pretty well, like we haven't made a deep run together, but I think we do a lot of things well, and I don't see why, if we keep working on things and working to improve, why we can't also have success on the ATP tour. So yeah, we'll see.
That's awesome, Reese. And yeah, hopefully I mean, optimally we'd catch you at Indian Wells if you can make the cut there, because
Yeah.
we'll definitely make the trip down south. We definitely want to let you get back to the off season here. Obviously, it's been a long season for you, but what we usually do is we finish with a quick rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions. Whatever comes to mind comes to mind. Ready to go?
Yep.
Alrighty. Favorite place?
Um, South Korea this year. That was my favorite this year.
Any reason why?
Food, insane, just sick place. Just super modern, super cheap. I don't know. We did some cool stuff. We visited the demilitarized zone, which was super sick. But yeah, I mean, I like a lot of places a lot, but I think that was a highlight this year for me.
Okay, super cool. Favorite movie?
Oh man. Man, not so much for rapid fire. What's my favorite movie? Benchwarmers. Think I laugh every time.
Nice.
Benchwarmers.
Favorite book?
I don't think I'm qualified to. I do not read enough to answer that question, unfortunately.
Okay, relatedly, favorite thing to do outside of tennis?
Um, I play a lot of chess actually, so I'd say that at times. I go through phases, but chess probably.
Awesome. Favorite food?
Sushi.
Favorite shot?
Tennis shot. Serve.
Yeah, we noticed that. You could pop it.
Yeah, sometimes some days it's better than others, but overall serve.
The
Depends on the
kick
day,
in
my favorite
the kick
shot.
too was scary.
That's why I like the California courts. They're bouncy.
Um, how about this? Favorite dubs formation?
Definitely I. I mean, we
Okay.
play almost exclusively out of eyes, so
Uh, do you guys go do you prefer T or wide? And then
uh
left or right for the I don't if this is too much information, I'm you do not
yeah,
have to answer it.
I think I'm gonna keep that
Keep it confidential.
disclosed. You never know who's listening in.
Keep it
We like that.
confidential.
We
Yeah.
we have our ideas on which ones you guys like, so we can talk about
Fair,
that later.
fair enough. Yeah.
Nice, man. And that was pretty much it from us. Really appreciate the time.
Sweet. Thanks a lot, guys. That was super fun.